Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is John Bosco, but my friends do call me JB, so please feel free to call me JB. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always trusting me. If this is the first time, perhaps someone referred you to visit me today, or you visited me by chance, I am glad to have you here. Don't forget to click the subscribe button, like, share, tell your friends about I Need Scrum Master. You could always visit us on our website, www.ineedscrummaster.com, and then you can get started with our agile journey as Scrum. All right, with that said, today we're going to do an analysis on a very important document, which goes back to my analysis about the origin or history of Scrum. Because the previous video I made, I kind of tried to gear our attention to the history or the origin of Scrum from the sports rugby. So today I'm going to also take us on another dimension, the origin of Scrum from a Harvard Business Review document called, quote, the new product development by two Japanese authors or writers, right? So today I'm going to take our attention in such a way that you can really follow and understand how Scrum has been looked at, not just from the sports perspective, but also from the literary perspective. All right. So if you haven't watched the video where I kind of give that analysis about how Scrum is a development from rugby sports, I would encourage you to go visit that video or watch that video, which is also on this page, and then let me know your your thoughts to the comment section. And if you have, this is also another dimension you can also follow in order to understand this holistic aspect of the origin of the word Scrum. With that said, let's get started. So I'm going to pull up some information and then we can look at it in a much more concrete and very direct dimension. All right. So today, like I said, we are going to take a look at this article, but I kind of gears that Scrum in practice. And the reason why I kind of try to draft the Scrum in practice for you can be able to look at the pragmatic aspect of the original Scrum, right? I don't want to make it so much theoretical, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure that I be able to present that holistic, that's more renowned, that's more well carved out a caveat of the status quo of how people used to envision Scrum. All right, so today, basically, when I say taking a look at, we wanted to take a look at Scrum from the literary perspective, right? So we're going to take a look at the origin of the concept of Scrum from the literary perspective. In other words, analysis of, quote, the new product development game by Takeuchi and Nonaka. These are Japanese IT guys, but they have tried to give us an idea from a literary perspective, right? And then we can also look at the similarity between the Scrum as an agile framework to the Scrum as in rugby sports. We wanted to know how closely each of them are related. All right, so first of all, we want to start with analysis of the new product development game. One of the things I try to do here is not just to discuss Scrum and Agile with you, but also one of the things that can distinguish if you are new to Scrum or you have been thinking about Scrum, what can really distinguish you from other Scrum masters, right? My ideal Scrum master is someone who is an excellent Scrum master, excellent in terms of knowing the technicalities, and at the same time, who can be able to really speak up and who can be able to demonstrate Scrum, not just from one perspective, but also from different perspective. All right, so as against the traditional way of building software, there have been some research on how to meet up with the requirement of speed and flexibility. These are the two concrete requirements that developers or IT people have been looking for a way to, or even what you could say, project management or people who are into project management or software development have been researching, right? So, and these two guys, Takuchi and Donaka, came up with this great document, right? So basically, they wanted to descend back from the old sequential approach, which is the waterfall approach, to the holistic approach, which is the agile approach, right? They wanted to see in what way these two approaches differ and in what way they converge. In other words, what are their similarities and what are their dissimilarities? And there are a couple of things that they kind of came together to analyze, and they kind of put that in this document, calling it the new product development game. So they try to make an analogy saying that the traditional way of working on a project, which is waterfall, for people who don't know what waterfall is, it is a project management approach or methodology. Just a simple explanation there. They said that it could relate it to a relay race. In a relay race, you know that the person in front would not start off the game if the person behind has not really completed some kilometers or some miles, right? So there has to be a previous movement before the later movement could be able to take place. That is a relay race. But in this holistic approach for them, right, it is like it is basically in a cyclic manner compared to a game called rugby. I am not a rugby expert, but I do understand that rugby is a sport where teams collaborate and then they have rules and regulations, or what you could call some abiding principles. And this formation of team has the frontliners, the middle, and the back, the quarterback, however the names are. But in all of these, they all work together for a common goal. All right, so in a rugby game, for them, according to Takuchi and Nonaka, in a rugby game, the team passes the ball back and forth. So there is a movement of ball in and out, right? But in this waterfall approach, right, things happen in a stage by stage approach, in phases, let's put it that way, right? One stage would not happen without the other. For example, you have the development, you have the visibility testing, you have the product design, and other development process before you can have the final production. So these are the stage by stage step that things have to go through before you can build a software, right? But the good news about this new product development game is that there is this idea of trial and error. We don't need to be certain about what we are working on. The team don't need to sit down a long time to plan, right? Perhaps it's just develop as you go, try as you go, right? So things begins to make more sense as you progress towards the development. And then as the team progress in developing, they learn on the process, right? So it is not just we have to make sure we have every answer on table before we can start. No. So it is adaptation, it is improvement, continuous development, continuous improvements as the team progress. All right, so for the authors, there are 6 characteristics that makes up the holistic approach, what we could call the Scrum approach. And then the first one has to deal with the built-in instability. The second one has to do with self-organizing project teams. The third one has to do with overlapping development phases. Fourth, multi-learning. Fifth, subtle control. And the final, organizational transfer of learning. Each of these 6 characteristics has its own contribution or has its own role to play in Scrum. By built-in instability, in a Scrum, the team, mostly don't get like the laid down instruction, right? They are being given an open-ended thing to do, right? That is the instability there. Imagine when you get asked an open-ended question. Sometimes you keep rambling about. So if you could apply that to that Scrum, you'll see in a Scrum project, sometimes we don't really have like the whole scope in front of us, right? So that is the way the instability sets in because things are not well defined, as in contrast to waterfall. Self-organizing project teams, right? Because the team have zero information. What I mean by zero information, because they don't have this well-ironed instruction or well-ironed scope set out or instruction before them. They are the ones that can be able to organize it by themselves. Self-organize means, without being um, micromanaged. Let me put it that way. Autonomy is another way you can use to attribute the self-organizing. The team is self-organized. They are autonomous. They have that autonomy to decide how. I mean, if you can also look at it from this perspective, in a Scrum environment, the developers decide on the how. The product owner decide on the what and the why, if that makes sense. So by that self-organization, the how is left for the developers to decide on how. Tell them what you want them to work on and let them have the freedom to decide on how. That is what it means by self-organization. All right, by overlapping development phases, I mean, the team synchronize pace to meet deadlines. So, I mean, they have the deadlines already in place, but they have to be able to work at a certain pace in order to meet that deadline. Multi-learning. In Scrum, there is always the trial and error, right? Um, and then they keep each other accountable on how they progress, which is against or which is in contrast to waterfall. In Scrum, there is what is called subtle control. Subtle control, in other words, is self-control, right? Control through peer pressure and love. Among Scrum team members, there is this idea of team collaboration, the idea of the three musketeers: one for all for one, right? They control how they go. They control in what way they can be able to work. And then the organizational transfer as learning. The team do not, most of the times, have all of the information they require or all of the knowledge they require. Sometimes the team contracts external body to help them on working on the projects, right? So there is always this idea of learning as the team progress. So these are the 6 characteristics based on the Ruby game. I mean, you can also see that in Ruby game, and also in this literary sense, these two writers was able to also garner together, was able to, streamline how Scrum works, not just in a software, in a software environment, but also from its literary perspective. Obviously, there are some drawbacks about Scrum. I was once interacting with certain friends, and they were like, "What would I say are the deficiencies in Scrum?" Scrum is not a silver bullet, right? Scrum might not have all the answers to all of the problems. So there are definitely some drawbacks. There are some limitations of Scrum, right? So Scrum is not a silver bullet where you have to rely on Scrum to provide you with the answer you're seeking, obviously, right? So it requires extraordinary effort on the part of all project members throughout the development process. Every day you'll learn, every day you'll learn, every day you'll learn. Even the co-founders of Scrum are always refining, are always trying to polish, are always trying to see how Scrum can be able to provide more reliable information or answer to problems. So it requires effort. There is no latency, right? So it is always growing. That is what it means by requires extraordinary efforts. All right, so the approach may not apply to breakthrough projects that require a revolutionary innovation. Simply put, it may not apply to all projects. Definitely, there are times Scrum might not really help, right? Scrum do not work in all environments. I have to repeat that again. Scrum do not work in all environments. There are environments that Scrum, wouldn't be the best bets. That is why sometimes you hear things like Scrum Ban, Scrum Bots, Scrum-a-fall. These are hybrid of Scrum and other frameworks or other practices. What does that mean? In other words, they are borrowing some ideas from Scrum and other in order to help. It may not apply to organization where product development is masterminded by genius. There are some projects where it requires one expertise in order to define the project goal, right? Scrum does not work as an individual. Scrum work in a collaborative environment. So these are some of the drawbacks, some limitations that Nonaki and Takuchi was able to look at in their literary texts. All right, so in an effort to adopt Scrum, right, there are three changes that are required. First step is the company needs to adopt a management style that can promote the process, right? So for some to flourish, it needs an environment that can promote that Scrum stuff, right? An environment that can macromanage rather than micromanage, an environment that can promote autonomy, an environment that can give the room for the developers can be able to decide on their how rather than on the what. An environment that allow them to assign tasks by themselves, not assigning tasks to them. Secondly, right, a different kind of learning is involved. Non-experts are required to undertake product development. So in a Scrum environment, learning is encouraged, right? People are encouraged to take some courses. People are encouraged to attend seminars. People should be encouraged to learn some new skills that can help to become high-performing team. Third step is management should assign a different mission to new product development. So these are primarily the three steps that are required in order to adopt Scrum. For companies that want to transition from waterfall to Scrum or to Agile using Scrum, these three simple steps should be encouraged, should be optimally encouraged. All right, so there are some similarities between Ruby Scrum and Agile Scrum. There are two Scrums, if you have to look at it from that perspective. There are the Ruby Scrum, which is the original Scrummage, and there is the Agile Scrum. In a Ruby Scrum and in an Agile Scrum, there are defined roles. There are defined roles, right? Everybody knows what his or her roles are. For example, you have the product owner, you have the Scrum Master, you have the developers. Secondly, the team work as a team towards a common goal or towards a common purpose, right? That is why in every sprint, for example, in Agile Scrum, the end is to be able to meet what is called the sprint goal. In the Ruby Scrum, the team primary purpose is to defeat their enemy. Whatever they do is to defeat their enemy. So that is that goal in that perspective. In both Scrum, there is this idea of flexibility. We don't have to be very rigid. Flexibility is encouraged, right? You have to tweak some things in and out. That's what I mean by flexibility. In Scrum, there are core values or what is called rules of the game in the Scrum Ruby. So also in an Agile Ruby, there are some, you have the Agile Manifesto, you have the 12 Agile Principles, you have the 3 pillars of Scrum. These are the core values, right? These are the things that helps to institute Scrum or that helps to make Scrum what is Scrum. In each of these, there is always someone who is there to coach, who is there to guide, who is there to encourage the team members to keep moving, to guide them to make sure that they are within the circumference of the Agile or within the rules of the game, which is the coach, right? All right, so these are what I call some practices that you should know, especially looking at Scrum from its literary perspective, right? I'll try to give us this historical exegesis from the sports perspective, and today we look at it from the literary perspective. I hope that these two perspectives can help you for those who are already practicing Scrum as Scrum Masters, and for those who are still on the Agile and Scrum journey, especially the newbies, can be able to understand that Scrum didn't just fall from the sky, right? Scrum it originated from a particular stance, right? you go back to the sports. But we've looked at the sports, perspective, which if you haven't watched the video, go and watch it. Today, we just look at it from the literary science. So this article, these two guys was able to look at it and give us that much more information, going back again to that sport event, but at the same time, trying to make a quantum leap, right? Explaining it in such a way that we can understand it in a much more clearer sense. All right. So if you're looking to become a Scrum Master, I encourage you to visit www.ineedscrummaster.com, right? You need a Scrum Master. You need someone who is quite experienced in different domain areas to help you towards your Scrum journey, right? If you know someone who is also interested in that, encourage the person to visit ineedscrummaster.com, or you could also contact info@ineedscrummaster.com, or you could also comment, and then I'll be able to respond as soon as possible. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you. If this is the first time you visited my channel, I would encourage you to click the subscribe button, like and share, and let me know your thoughts. All right. Thank you once again for visiting my website and visiting my page. I will see you again next time. All right. Thank you. Bye for now.